Welcome back to another episode of At the Bar, where we get a chance to sit down with everyday athletes. We have another quarantine edition here, so getting a chance to chat with Jenna Weinstein over Zoom here. I'm Brad Marshall. And with Jenna here today, I'm going to let her kick it off by just telling us a little bit more about herself.
Nice. Thanks, Brad. Thanks for having me. Like you said, my name is Jenna Weinstein. Presently, I am in a similar field to you. I work in the field of sport and performance psychology. I also am a performance coach for the U.S. Army. I've been doing that for 6 years now. And on the side, I also have my own performance consulting company, Ripple Effect Performance, where I'm located out of Savannah, Georgia, where I work primarily with, right now, high school athletes who are transitioning into college athletics and some local athletes in running clubs and things like that. So I'm working on expanding in some CrossFit athletes as well. So that's what I'm presently doing. And I've always been an athlete as well. So I've always been a fan of playing sports, always loved playing sports. I started playing soccer when I was about 8 or 9, and then played all up through high school, went to college with the intent to play soccer, made it to tryouts, did not jive well with the team. They were a really competitive team, which I liked, but they were competitive with each other and not necessarily in a healthy way, but more in a toxic way where it's not encouragement, competitiveness. It's more of like, we're better than you and we want you to know it. So you can only be with this team if you're the best of the best. And I didn't think that that was the right type of vibe for me, for the type of team that I wanted to be on. So I actually quit the soccer team when I got to college. And then I made the transition to playing rugby about 3 weeks after that, because I had always been a team sport athlete and didn't want my athletic career to be over. And I was going to the gym and working out and doing my own thing, but I missed that team-like environment. And I just got very fortunate that a rugby player walked up to me one day and said, "Hey, do you want to play rugby?" And they didn't know anything about me. I think they were just trying to recruit anybody they could. And I said, "Yeah," without even knowing what it was. And I was all in. I played all 4 years of college, and I was pretty competitive for my team. I qualified for regional level play while I was in college. I've gotten invites to try out for national level teams and elite level teams. And unfortunately, at the end of my senior year in college, I dislocated one of my elbows in our last match of the season. So that cut my competitive rugby career short, but it made the decision to go to grad school that much easier. So I was already studying psychology in undergrad, and it wasn't until my junior year of college that I started hearing about the field of sports psychology. And having experienced an injury recently in my career, and I had other injuries previously, I figured, you know what? Sports psychology seems like a really interesting fit for me, because I didn't see myself as a clinician of sorts, but I saw myself wanting to work with the people that I understood and I knew well and related to. And sports psychology seemed like a great fit. Took the two things that I was really interested in, athletics, competitive competition, and psychology, and it blended them really nicely. So I went to grad school at Springfield College. I think like you went there, but we missed each other somehow. We didn't see each other there.
Yeah.
And I ended up studying the psychology of injury, wanting to understand how injuries and setbacks can demotivate athletes or reinvigorate athletes. And I actually spent a lot of time doing research on athletes with disabilities. And I thought that was the niche that I wanted to work with. I thought I had a really big interest at that point of working with special populations. So athletes with acquired or congenital disabilities, like people who were either born with a disability, whether it was physical or cognitive, or people who acquired a disability through some type of traumatic experience or accident. And I found that sports was always a very common factor in their lives at some way, shape, or form. Either they were really working hard to be athletic or prove that they were more capable than people assumed they were, or they use sports as a coping mechanism to deal with their injury. So I just really loved that population. I was so motivated by their level of motivation and how much effort they put in, without necessarily having the same level of support that an able-bodied athlete would have. So my first job out of grad school was actually doing strength and conditioning for spinal cord injury patients, working with people who are paraplegics, quadriplegics, strokes, and TBI patients. So that was right outside of Boston for an organization called Journey Forward. While I was there, a couple of my clients were former military, and I realized that the military probably has a big need for sports psychologists or people in the sports psychology field. And I got really lucky to find the job that I have now, where I'm working for the US Army, doing sports psychology coaching for soldiers on an everyday basis. And now my focus has really been on doing like leadership development, team development, and just helping soldiers work together more cohesively, know how to create culture change and develop the type of leadership style that's going to create commitment rather than compliance. So that's been a lot of fun for me the last couple of years. And when I'm not working, I'm currently still training as an athlete. So I don't really play rugby anymore. I might mess around with a local team here and there, but due to my job, I don't really have the time to commit to a rugby team. But I've done CrossFit for about 4 or 5 years. And then I just really got the itch to try competing in something again. And I've done CrossFit competitions and I enjoy them, but I've always been more of a barbell fan. So, I mean, I'm small, I'm only 5 feet tall. And so people in the CrossFit community are always telling me like, oh, you'd be so good at the gymnastics stuff, but I'm so not coordinated or graceful. And I can do it. I'm decent at like body weight movements and stuff, but I just love lifting. And so I made the decision this last year to really commit to powerlifting. And that's where my focus has been. And up until this quarantine period has come up, I was scheduled to compete in my first powerlifting competition this weekend, but now it is rescheduled for July. So I'm finishing up my training cycle right now, and now I'm going to be retesting all my lifts next week, and then hopefully starting up another training cycle in the next couple of weeks to get ready to compete in July. So that's where I'm at right now.
Nice. And one of the things I love and I find so fascinating is, we talk about the conversations that we have on this show is all about health and fitness and mindset, and all of those things you just shared with us about how passionate you are about health and fitness and mindset, and how that's guided and influenced you both in your own personal athletic ventures, whether it was soccer or rugby or now CrossFit into powerlifting, but also in the work that you get a chance to do with other people. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about what has your fitness journey look like? So you said soccer, you said rugby. I know when we worked together, there were some other fun experiences you had in your exercise and fitness background. So walk us through just a little bit about what are some of the different things you've tried and done, and what have you enjoyed as you go through your journey?
Yeah, it's fun to reflect on it, because I like thinking about it. I don't really think that I've done that much, but when I count up all the different ways that I've practiced health and fitness, I've actually done a pretty good amount. So yeah, soccer was one. I also used to compete in swimming when I was younger and dabbled in track. College was primarily just rugby. And that's actually when I really started getting into weight training, was college. I think I started in high school because the weightlifting coach saw that I was really into like just being physically healthy, and he started teaching me like basic lifts. But it wasn't until I started playing rugby that my coach said to me, hey, you're the smallest person on the field, so we need to find a way to make you bigger. You're not going to get any taller, so we need to make you denser. So that's when he introduced me to like really like for me at the time, like heavier weightlifting, like doing more barbell squats, deadlifts, like all kind like dumbbell work, and I loved it. And I even started personal training in college, so that was really fun. Then in grad school, I was still playing rugby in grad school recreationally, but I actually started getting into figure and competitive like bodybuilding. I dabbled in that for a little bit in grad school. And I think I got into that because I'd met a couple of people who had competed in that world before, and they said, hey, you have like a really natural physique for the sport. You love training already, so you'd be really good at it. And eventually I thought, okay, why not? Why not try it? Like it was my second year of grad school, my last year, and I figured, I'm not really training for anything. I'm the type of athlete that if I don't have a competition or some type of goal, I still like to train, but my training isn't as focused. So I like to have something to work towards too. So I signed up for a competition and I figured, okay, now I really got to train for it. And I learned that I really love the physical training aspect of figure and bodybuilding. I did not like the nutritional side of figure and bodybuilding. And I take some of the blame for that because I just didn't know what I didn't know. And when you're so new to a sport, especially if you're really eager to be competitive in it, you're going to listen to anybody who gives you advice most of the time. And unfortunately, I took some bad advice from former like competitors who said, hey, I remember I was about 3 weeks out from my first show and I was down to about 109, 110 pounds. And I sit comfortably at around 118, 120. So cutting 10 pounds at my size was already a pretty big cut. And this woman was saying, hey, you're still too big to compete. You need to get down even more. So that's when she told me how to really cut calories and really track my calories and restrict meals. So the 3 weeks before my show, I was probably only eating maybe 1,200 calories a day. And I ended up becoming super obsessive with how much I was eating, when I was eating, what I was eating. And in the moment, I didn't see anything wrong with it. And it's just ironic looking back on it now because I was in school getting my degree in sport performance psychology. And I learned all the signs about like female athletes specifically or physique athletes who develop eating disorders or disordered eating habits because they just become very obsessive about what they're eating. And I thought, well, that's not me because I'm training for a competition. I could stop this if I wanted to. And unfortunately, after I got done competing for that show, I couldn't stop. And it took me about a year to really get out of that mindset of being really obsessive and compulsive with not just what I was eating, but like how I looked at myself physically. And I didn't like that I developed that mindset and that mentality about myself, that here I am, a person who's always valued having a strong mentality about like being healthy and like doing good for your body. And here I was slowly destroying my body. And I just felt very hypocritical that I was in a field that was to prevent this from happening and I was falling into it myself. And so I stopped competing in figure because I just couldn't, it just wasn't healthy for me. I think it's still a great sport for people to do if you do it right. And if you have the right coaches who are going to take care of you. But I just know that that's not the type of sport for me anymore. And, the heels and the bikini just weren't my thing either. So naturally progressed out of that. And that's when I found CrossFit after grad school. And CrossFit seemed like the right thing that I needed at the time. So much body positivity. And I was looking at so many female athletes on TV at the time, because this was around 2013, 2014, when CrossFit was just starting to become more popular. And I saw women who had very similar physiques to me. Like they were strong, they were muscular, and they were lean, but I saw videos of them behind the scenes and they were eating so much food. And I was just like, I want to do that. I want to be able to eat all the food and not feel guilty for eating food. And so I joined a gym and I met such great women and other coaches and other athletes who were just like, we work hard, we train hard, and we do it smart. And that was just the reassurance that I needed. So I really fell in love with CrossFit for a few years, and I competed casually. I had like pipe dreams of maybe going to the games, but I didn't have it in me to train that hard. And I also got into like marathon running and long distance running. So I ran a couple of marathons after that. So I ran the Boston Marathon. I actually ran it sponsored by that organization. I worked for Journey Forward. So I was a sponsored runner for them, raised a lot of money for their organization running for them. And that same year, I ran the New York City Marathon. I ran a couple of half marathons, and I learned that I like running. I enjoy running. Running for very long distances is a great mental test because I think people don't realize how much they can do until they actually have to do it. And it's I'm not going to say that it's not hard, but it's not necessarily the hardest thing I've done because again, unless depending on what level of competitiveness you're at, if you're just running a marathon or any race for fun, there's no need to really push yourself to your limits because you should just enjoy the experience. And that's what I didn't necessarily do that when I ran the Boston Marathon. I was so competitive, and even though I wasn't a great runner, I was like, I'm going to run this as hard as I can. And I did fine. I ran like a little, about 4.5 hour marathon, which is average, adequate. And then the New York City Marathon, I was like, I'm just going to really enjoy the race. I'm from New York City. That's my home. And I thought it was just a really great opportunity to appreciate running through a city where people are just, they don't even know you and they're cheering for you. You meet great people along the way. And it was a lot easier to run that race physically and mentally because I didn't feel as much pressure to like hit a time or anything like that. So training for the New York City Marathon was a lot easier as well. And then I went back to sticking with CrossFit for a little while after that. And now I've just made the shift to powerlifting because, like I said, I just really love the barbell. I learned that I can do the endurance sports and I enjoy them a lot. But I really want to see how strong I can get weight-wise. So I've seen how far I can go endurance-wise, and I might get back into that at some point. But now I really want to test my limits in the strength world. And I've really been enjoying it so far. So I think I found my home away from home under the barbell. And I'm just sticking with it now and seeing how my first competition goes in a few months.
Yeah. What's so fascinating to me listening to all these experiences you've had is, I think to the outside person looking at those different exercises or fitness routines you've chosen, they seem almost extreme. Rugby is a very rugged sport, tough sport. And then you think about bodybuilding and physique, that's another type of extreme. CrossFit can be a tough workout, marathon running. So all of these things seem like really challenging different fitness regimens for you. So I'm curious from your perspective, what do you think it is, or what's sort of the thread that maybe draws some of those together that like you really like doing hard and challenging things, but you still said you found enjoyment in those, even though it was, to the outsider, a really tough thing.
Yeah. I think I don't necessarily see them as extreme. I think that's like what's extreme to one person is just like an everyday thing for another individual. But I think I've always been a little crazy when it comes to the world of sports and athletics. And I think I've always been drawn to sports that are a little non-traditional and slightly controversial, especially for female athletes. I think if a male athlete says, hey, I play rugby, oh, that makes sense. Or if a guy says, hey, I'm an endurance runner, I run like ultras and I run marathons, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Or if men say, I compete in bodybuilding, obviously, or hey, I compete in powerlifting, okay, yeah, those are very male dominated sports. So I think when people meet women, especially who compete in these sports and enjoy competing in these sports and do well in these sports, it's like, well, what's wrong with you? Hey, you seem a little crazy. And I don't think it's crazy. I just don't think it's traditional. Mm-hmm. And I just think it seems extreme because it's not very common for a female athlete to necessarily be seen in that realm. So I'd like to think that that other females are inspired by seeing myself or other women in these sports and saying, hey, I never thought that I could do like a marathon, but now I've seen Jenna and she's very similar to me. maybe I can try because she did, maybe I can do it. Or, you know, I never thought that I could do powerlifting. I'm so small, like there's nowhere in this sport for me. But I look at you and you're small too, and you're doing it and you're doing awesome. So maybe I could try it too. And I think as like any athlete usually has some type of mentor or somebody that they look up to and admire that inspires them to get into that sport. And I think young boys in general have so many more people that they can look up to in the world of sports. And for women, I think we have a lot more idols that we can look up to now. But I think in some of these extreme sports or non-traditional sports, it's still not as frequent. So I maybe it is extreme what I'm doing, but I think it's fun to try and test myself in these different ways and do something a little different and a little crazy, because you don't really know what you're capable of doing until you've done something you've never done before. And I remember my dad always told me when I was younger, if you do what you've always done, you get what you've always got. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's really good. Sometimes you know what works for you and you can stay with it. But I think in the world of sport and health and wellness, if you do what you've always done, then you get what you've always got. That might not always be a good thing. If you've always eaten donuts and not exercise, then you know you're going to get what you've always gotten. But if you start exploring new sports or new activities or a new lifestyle, you don't know what's going to happen for you. Maybe it can open up so many doors for you. You can meet so many cool people, new people, and that's what I've been really enjoying about this world of powerlifting right now. I'm just meeting so many different people through it, and slowly but surely, like I'm meeting other women and men too who are just saying, you know, just awesome, so great to see somebody else in the field just trying to get after it and crush it. Yeah. So it's really been nice from that perspective as well.
Yeah, and some common threads I'm hearing too is when you talked about all of your experiences, you had really strong role models or mentors or a community focused on sort of that body positivity. When you were starting in your CrossFit career, you were looking at folks on TV. So I'm curious if there's other, you know, female role models or mentors that you've looked up to or come to know throughout this journey that have been really supportive of you, or just somebody that, you know, as you've continued to watch or appreciate what they're doing, it's, you know, motivated you or encouraged you to keep pushing?
I can remember when I was really young. So I remember when the women's soccer team won the World Cup in 1999. And I was just a young kid. I was only a few years into playing soccer, and I knew I loved the sport at that time. But the women on that team that year were such role models for me in the world of sport, like Mia Hamm, Brandy Chastain, all of them were so great to watch. And it was the penalty kick that Brandy Chastain made at the end of the game. And she was so renowned for, at the end of the game, like celebrating by taking off her shirt and like sliding into her team in just her sports bra. And I remember seeing her picture on the cover of so many magazines and seeing like, oh wow, there's like a female athlete who is strong, confident, and so confident to the point that she's okay taking off her shirt in celebration of her body and what her body can do in front of a stadium of people and celebrating with her team. And I was just like, I want to be able to have that level of confidence in myself as an athlete, as a person, as a woman. And so that was something that clicked for me on a very subconscious level, I think, as a kid, where I want to be like that. I just want to be comfortable, like going into any room, any venue, and just knowing that like I can own the room just through my energy and having that level of confidence in myself. And I think being involved in sports has really boosted my confidence, because it's shown me that I can do a lot more than I think I can. Yeah. So I never thought that I'd like have played rugby before. I feel like I'm a Rudy type character where I'm 5 foot nothing, 100 and nothing. And here I am at like in college, like almost qualifying for national level teams. Like who would have thought I never would have thought I could have done that. Never would have thought I would have been able to run a marathon, let alone 2 or 3. Never thought I would have been on stage competing in figure, like in a bikini and heels next to some beautiful, like dedicated women and competitors, but I did it. And never thought that I would like a sport like CrossFit, because at first it seemed like just a cool club people were a part of that pretended to exercise, but it is one of the best organizations I've been a part of. And I've really learned a lot about my abilities physically as a CrossFit athlete. And then now with powerlifting, oh my gosh, I feel like I learn a different lesson every day in a session, just unreal. So I think in the world of health and fitness, whether you're super competitive or not, it's just such a great way to just test your limits physically, but mentally, because I think until we try something new, we don't realize how capable we are. And I think we're full of surprises, and we just have to put ourselves in the right opportunity to see those surprises and let ourselves experience them.
Yeah, it's amazing how different role models or people we look up to can inspire us to really put it out there, put it on the line, and see what we can accomplish in our own lives. And I think that's just a really nice segue into, and in on our episodes here, we talk a lot about health and fitness and what we can learn from that, but we also talk about that mindset component as well. And what's really fascinating from what you said is that there's sometimes we train the mindset to help ourselves out in whatever the sport is or whatever the endeavors we're working towards. But there's so much that we may not even realize we're learning through the process of doing difficult and challenging things. Right. And it sounds like for you, confidence was one of those big mental skills that was crafted and developed from doing difficult things. What are some other mental skills, or talk to us about your mindset that you've come to know from doing all of these challenging things over the years?
Yeah, I think so. I think confidence bleeds over into so many things, because if you can be confident in a gym, you can be confident in any venue. Like my job requires me to teach in front of soldiers anywhere from like 20 to a couple hundred at a time. And I remember when I first started this job, one of my colleagues said, "Are you comfortable like in a gym, like working out in front of a bunch of strangers?" And I said, "Yeah." And he's like, "Then you can be confident anywhere." Just take that confidence and transfer it into this venue. And that's always stuck with me, that if you're confident in one avenue, you can transfer that confidence into another venue or avenue. So that's something that I've always been trying to stay aware of and remind myself, hey, Jenna, you lift twice your body weight. There's nothing that anybody can say or do to you that's really going to hurt you, because if you can manage to lift twice your body weight without hurting yourself and doing it well, if somebody doesn't like what you have to say, that's not going to be awful. So just own what you say and love what and stand behind what you say and do. I think another big thing for me in the mindset aspect, or like the mental game aspect, is just especially I think like motivation piece is just such a big thing when it comes to any type of training or healthy lifestyle, because sometimes maintaining some type of healthy lifestyle isn't always glamorous or fun. Sometimes it requires doing things that aren't exactly like sexy, or don't make sense to a lot of people when they say, "What do you mean you want to go to bed at 9:30? What do you mean you're getting up at 4:30 in the morning to train?" Like, that doesn't sound fun. I'm saying it's not. It's not fun. Trust me, I'd rather be sleeping, but that's the only time of day that I can work out sometimes. Or hey, wouldn't you rather eat this bag of chips versus this piece of salmon and sweet potatoes? I'm like, absolutely, I love chips. But for what my body needs right now, I got to give it the fuel it needs. So I think it teaches you a level of discipline to be able to make those choices without feeling like you're missing out on anything. You learn to say, it's not that I have to do this, I want to do this, I get to do this. Because I think a lot of times in my experience, when I used to work with personal training clients, they would say, I'm trying to follow this diet. What can I eat? What am I allowed to eat? And I said, well, you're allowed to eat whatever you want. Hey, you choose what you want to eat and what you don't want to eat. Like, it's your body, your choice. Like, you do what you do to it because you want to. And I think that's a big wake-up call for a lot of athletes, where if you want to compete in a certain sport, or if you want to live a certain lifestyle, there are choices that you can make. And if you make these choices, they're going to bring you closer to your goals. And if you don't, that's okay. Just know that they might not bring you as close to your goals as quickly. And I think sometimes there's a lot of guilt felt when we're trying to pursue a very healthy lifestyle, and we think, oh man, I cheated on my diet today, I might as well just scrap it for the rest of the week and start over next week. It's like, no, you're human. It's okay. You're allowed to enjoy food. You shouldn't have a love-hate relationship with food. You shouldn't have a love-hate relationship with exercise or activity. You should just understand that you're doing the things you're doing because you want to, and they're good for you, and you enjoy them on some level. I don't enjoy waking up early and exercising before the sun's up, but I know in the long run it's going to be good for me, and it's getting me closer to a goal that I want to achieve. So it's worth it in the moment to do that. So that's been a big opportunity of learning for me, to just own my choices and know that the choices I make are for my betterment, and not because I'm torturing myself or because I'm trying to like punish myself for eating poorly the day before. I'm doing the things I'm doing because I want to do them, and I think that's been a really big realization for me as well, to not feel guilty for the choices I make.
Yeah, and some really powerful things that I heard you say was, one, confidence, the ability to have that belief in yourself and know that you can do difficult things, and that you've been able to cultivate that by making good decisions and having choices in your life that move you towards where you'd rather go rather than against. And it's really fascinating too, something that you mentioned is the language that we have and the way that we think about or talk to ourselves. What can I not do, or what do I have to avoid, or what do I have to push off, versus, no, I'm allowed to do it all. It's just the choices I make. That gives me the power. So I feel like I'm the one who's influencing or moving myself in the right direction, versus the situation or the environment I'm in. So it's really cool to hear how throughout your journey, you've learned some of these mental skills that I know you get a chance to train other people on, but to experience them yourself, I think that's a whole different ballgame. And you're able to speak from a more grounded place about them.
Yeah, it's definitely fun. And I think especially when you're in the field of sport and performance psychology, I mean, I work with a lot of people in this field, and some of them are former athletes and some of them are still athletes in their own way. And I think it's just always really important to keep doing something, because I don't know, you're only given one body. You're only given so many opportunities to use it and to push it to see what it can do. And it's so amazing what your body can do and what your mind can do if you're just willing to try. So I always encourage people, if they say, I've always been tempted to try weightlifting, but I don't know if it's for me. I'm like, well, try it. What's the worst thing that happens? You don't like it and you find something else that you do like, that's okay. Or if they say, I've always wanted to run a marathon, but I just don't know if it's for me. Well, try it. Try it. Nothing bad's going to happen to you. Like, maybe you get a little injured along the way. And I think the possibility of injury scares so many people from even trying things. And I think, if injuries are going to happen one way or another, you can get injured just, walking around your house and whatnot, and not even doing anything that physical. So you might as well be doing something, and then be able to say, well, you know what, at least I might have gotten hurt, I might have overdone it, but I've learned what not to do. And I've learned how to recover from injury now in a healthy way and get back on the horse. And now I know what I want to get back to. And so I just think so easily we're tempted to make an excuse to not do something, because it's easier to avoid doing the things we're unsure of or don't know what the outcome's going to be, versus embarking on a journey that we're excited for. And I think, this is a good time. We've been given an opportunity right now that many of us are forced to work from home and maybe downshift a little bit. And I think I just heard this recently, that you shouldn't waste a crisis. And I had to sit with that for a minute, and that really hit me hard. And I thought, I think our natural inclination when we're faced with a crisis is to completely stop and panic. But what if instead of stopping and panicking, we collected ourselves and really thought about, okay, what can we do to make the most of the situation and grow from the situation? Because no crisis lasts forever. And usually after some type of crisis, there's a huge amount of growth. So what can you do to add to that growth that could happen for you personally, or for your family, or for your job, for your organization? What can you do to grow from this crisis? And so I hope more people are taking the opportunity now. And I've been seeing so much on the internet right now that people have been taking the opportunity during this crisis time to really work on themselves and maybe try and turn a new page in their lives and adopt more of like this healthier mindset lifestyle now that they can focus on themselves more. So it's just been so nice to see that too.
Yeah, it's one of the benefits, I think, of the opportunity we have on social media and things like that. Like you see workouts everywhere across social media. You go to any fitness store, they're sold out of every piece of equipment you could possibly do. You go to the store and they're out of all the healthy food now. So it's very interesting what you said there about how sometimes a crisis allows us to do a little bit of that inward reflection and figure out, hey, have I been aligning my life with what I want or the direction I want to go? And it gives people this opportunity to grow and develop from that. So I think that's a really cool perspective to take.
Mm-hmm.
As we think about, bringing this conversation to a close, and it's been fascinating to hear your journey and all of the different opportunities you've had, the ways you found enjoyment in fitness, pushed yourself, tested yourself, developed different mindset skills. I'm curious what you would say to somebody, and part of what you just said, I think, is a nice tee up for that, of somebody who's trying to maybe better themselves, get going on the path that they'd like to go down, or just make some changes that they could live a little bit healthier or more fit lifestyle. What's something that you might say to them to encourage?
I think something that I tell people all the time when they're trying to get into the fitness field or just exercise a little bit more is I think we get so excited. We're so tempted to just jump right in. And I always encourage people to start slow and start small and start simple, slow, small, and simple. If you can make changes slowly and if you can make small changes and simple changes, it's not going to be overwhelming. And it's going to be a lot easier for you to sustain those changes for a longer period of time. So when I meet women or anybody who's trying to get more in, like figuring out how can I change my eating habits or how can I change my exercise habits, like just do one small thing and do it slowly and slowly integrate it into your everyday life. And then it'll become a habit. And then you're not going to have to think about it. You're not going to have to ask yourself, do I want to do this? Do I not want? You just automatically do it now. Versus what unfortunately a lot of people do is they'll throw out all the unhealthy food in their house, replace it with food that they don't like or know how to cook or know how to prepare properly. They'll spend all this money on a gym membership for a gym that they might not feel 100% comfortable in, not know how to use all the equipment. And maybe not even have like all the funding ready to support that gym membership. And then a month goes by and they're just so overwhelmed by the amount of changes that they've made. Like, what if you just did one small thing? Like, rather than throwing out all your food, what if you just bought like one or two new vegetables and incorporated it into your like cooking routine? What if instead of eating out like 4 days a week, you just went down to 3 days a week? Like a small, simple change that's not going to knock you off your rocker and make you feel like you have to do this, that it's a chore, but a small, like gradual change that you barely even notice. But over time, those small changes are going to add up and make a really big impact on your life.
Yeah, I like that. Small, slow, and simple. Just one little step here, and that leads to the next one. And then those decisions, they start becoming a lot easier. So rather than like big deal, it takes a lot of willpower. It's like, oh no, this is starting to become a habit. And now I'm moving in the direction I want to go.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us today and telling us a little bit more about yourself and your story. It's always fascinating. I always love our opportunities to catch up and chat, to hear what you're up to these days. So wish you the best of luck as you get ready for your next powerlifting competition.
Yes.
Another cycle to get ready, so that's probably a benefit for you. If people want to catch up with you, what would you say is the best way to keep up with you?
Yeah, I think so. You could definitely follow. I post regularly on Instagram on my personal page. It's at justcallme_Jenna. I post all of my lifting videos and my training videos on there. You'll even find you'll see my garage gym. So I like to use that as an opportunity to show people how to set up a garage gym nowadays too. And then my business page for Ripple Effect Performance is at Ripple Effect Performance as well. And I post like workout content on there, mental skills training content as well. And I also have a Facebook page, Ripple Effect Performance. So I always post different things on those sites as well. So those are the main places that people could definitely start following me.
Awesome. And if you want to see some cute corgi photos and videos, Oz is always involved.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
know he's sitting there by you. But so Jenna, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Brad.
If you enjoyed our episode, feel free to like and subscribe and comment below with anything that you enjoyed, something you took away from the conversation, or something you'd like to see us talk about in the future. We'll continue to bring you conversations with everyday athletes talking about health, fitness, and mindset. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.